To address the privacy concerns and the demographic data breaches, recently Unique Identification Authority of India announced security firewalls like virtual IDs, eKYC and facial recognition. How fail-proof are these methods and can it really help the government to meet its objectives? Joining me now is CEO of Unique Identification Authority of India, Dr. Ajay Bhushan Pandey. Welcome, sir. On to the point. My first question to you, sir, is that if you look at the journey of Aadhaar right from its inception, has it really been able to achieve its objectives?
You see, this Aadhaar journey was started in 2009 and first Aadhaar card was issued in 2010. Now since then, we have given Aadhaar to 1.19 billion people. Just imagine, on our planet, every sixth person on this planet has Aadhaar, and this Aadhaar has given particularly to every Indian now a unique identity, and it is unique because it is based on the biometric. It is almost impossible for a person to get more than one Aadhaar number, and secondly, it is also an online verifiable identity, unlike any other identity system of this scale in the world. Prior to Aadhaar, people had various kind of identities. But the question was that when you took that identity before any person, before whom you want to prove your identity, that person had some kind of a doubt in his mind.
Dr. Pandey, are we in a position to say that Aadhaar is going to become the sine qua non, or to put it simply, that the most essential condition for an Indian citizen's existence?
No, I would put it in a different manner. Aadhaar is now today the most trusted identity, and therefore it is the people themselves would choose to use Aadhaar for proving their identity.
Dr. Pandey, you're right when you say that as far as the trust quotient is concerned, of course Aadhaar has been on the winning side. People do consider it as a very authentic piece of document. But along with this trust quotient, you have a number of insecurities when it comes to the data breaches which have come across through the government websites. We saw the kind of data leaks which happened. Then you recently had a Tribune case where journalists said that a lot of data has been breached. And over the period, I think since 2016 onwards, we've had many reports where data breaches have taken place. So how would you really address these concerns?
I mean, the instances that you mentioned about publishing of Aadhaar number on the website,
right,
the publishing of Aadhaar number in that Tribune story, according to us, it is not a data breach of Aadhaar database.
But how about cases like MS Dhoni's data being leaked and it became like a talk of the town?
Yes, exactly. So see, in our country, we still have to understand the basic data protection. Certain data becomes known in the public, but that does not necessarily mean that it is a breach of Aadhaar database. For example, now in the cases that you are talking about, now what was happening is that the government departments, they were publishing their list of beneficiaries, that name, address, bank account number, even the Aadhaar number and other details.
For the government subsidies, you're saying?
For the government subsidies, right.
Right.
Now, this particular display of information, strictly speaking, as per the Information Technology Act, they could not have even published your bank account number, right? Because the bank account number is not a secret information, it is a personally sensitive information. Mobile number is not a secret information, but it is a personally sensitive information. Now, they should not have published your bank account number, even the date of birth, for example. They should not have published your date of birth. Now, if all these informations have been published, so they are the violations of the concerned information technology laws. But to say that bank account number has been published on those websites and therefore entire banking database has been breached is not correct. In a similar manner, if supposing somebody has published somebody's Aadhaar number, of course, it is something which should not have been done under the IT law.
What you are saying is that no data breaches have taken place, but intrusion of privacy has happened according to the IT Act.
Yes, intrusion of privacy has happened, and for that purpose, the concerned departments were advised that please don't do this, please don't publish the mobile number, date of birth, and also the Aadhaar number, and these things should not have happened. And exactly to address this larger issue of data privacy, there is a committee has been constituted under Justice Sri Krishna. I am also one of the member of that committee. And then the overall, what should be the data protection framework, what should be the data privacy framework, and what should be the law, those things will come. But to extend that, such disclosures, and to say that Aadhaar database has been breached is a completely incorrect, and that is what we have been telling people. Moreover, publication of an Aadhaar number, I must say, and I have said earlier also, Aadhaar number is not a secret information, because Aadhaar number is in your ID card, and you are supposed to be giving your ID card to everywhere, wherever it is demanded. So that definitely can't be a secret information. What is secret is your password, the PIN, ATM PIN, your OTP that you get. These are the secret information which you should not be sharing. Aadhaar card is an identity document, and identity document per se can never be a secret information.
But over the period, the government has been urging the people to link their income tax filing with Aadhaar, linking SIM card with Aadhaar. Now latest you have is that you have to link your bank accounts with Aadhaar. So how does one see that?
You see, there are three very important things which are happening in our country. One is the linking of Aadhaar with the PAN cards.
Right.
Linking of Aadhaar with the bank accounts, and linking of Aadhaar with the mobile phones. And there are very, very strong reasons for this. Now, over the past several decades, ever since we got an independence, this PAN card, the income tax identification number, which is called, permanent account number.
There have been reports of fake PAN cards being issued.
And this whole, the tax evasion, the money laundering, Benami accounts were being operated through the fake PANs, duplicate PANs, and also the fake bank accounts and duplicate, the ghost bank accounts, for example. I mean, we often hear that the bank accounts, through some phishing or through some other technological frauds, money was withdrawn from somebody's bank account and taken to somebody else's bank account. And by the time police reaches there, that bank account, the cash is withdrawn, and then the bank account is closed. So what has been done now is that PMLA rules, prevention of money laundering rules, have been amended, and where it has been prescribed that every bank account in the country has to be verified with Aadhaar.
Dr. Pandey, there is no doubt about the fact that the intent is very serious, and as you said, that the trust quotient is so high. But as also you're saying that no data breaches have happened, but there is so much of political rhetoric around this Aadhaar, that the government is not serious, it is intruding, there are so many breaches which have happened. How will you really clear out this perception? Because obviously the case is still pending in the Supreme Court, and you still have a lot of discussion which is still happening. How would you really clear the air at this moment?
See, let me clarify this. Being a professional civil servant, I would not like to, comment on the political rhetoric part of this. But definitely, if there are concerns among the general public, I must address this as being the CEO of this organization. And I have always said that there has not been any breach of any Aadhaar database during the last 7 years of existence. And let me also explain to you, what do you mean by breach? The world over, every IT system has, hundreds of vulnerabilities every day. Like, for example, if you are using computer, laptop, you are using Windows software, or maybe your mobile phone, if you are using Android or iOS, don't you receive patch every day, right? Those patches are for what purpose? Those patches are for two purposes. One is for enhancing the functionality, and other, one class of patch
for the security concerns,
is for the, plugging the security loopholes, right? So what happens is that, when you have the vulnerabilities, there is a system to score the, classify the vulnerabilities in terms of, what is critical. Then below the critical is a high vulnerability, then the medium, and then there are low. Okay. So if supposing something is very, very critical vulnerability, then that must be immediately responded to and must be plugged. Similarly, the high ones, medium is something is that yes, this medium vulnerability is there, and then as per the departmental policy, you need to address that. But supposing something is very, very low vulnerability, then maybe there are certain types of vulnerabilities that could be only for the informational purpose, and you need to be just aware of this. So what people are generally talking is that some data breach here and there. First of all, the data breach has not happened from the UIDAI side. It has happened in somewhere, some Aadhaar number was being used, not inside the UIDAI, but some in the outer, in entire the ecosystem.
There is also a perception somewhere that this authentication process was outsourced to a number of thousands and thousands of private parties were involved who apparently did not know how to handle, and apparently it happened at their end, and unnecessarily you cannot blame the government or UIDAI for that. Am I right?
Yes,
when I'm
for
asking
example,
that?
let's say, same the publishing of Aadhaar number on the government websites. Yeah. Now there, the government websites are, they are the service delivery or welfare delivery departments, like, Manrega or
Right.
the PDS, right? Now, when they are authenticating and then when they are collecting the various, data, including the Aadhaar number, they should use Aadhaar number as per the prescribed procedures which are defined in the regulations and the Act, and accordingly they should protect the privacy so that the people are not unnecessarily inconvenienced, or people are not unnecessarily their data protection and the privacy is to that extent is affected, right. But to classify this as a breach into Aadhaar database, I think it's not correct.
Dr. Pandey, you said that the Aadhaar cards started, the issuance of Aadhaar cards started somewhere in 2010. Now, about 8 years later, we are talking about firewalls like virtual IDs, we are talking about facial recognition. Isn't this something which could have been planned much earlier to prevent the government from being faced with criticisms like, this is an act first and think later kind of a government? There are criticisms coming in like that.
Let's say if there is some new technology which comes, then somebody could say that, okay, why this new technology could not have come maybe 5 years or 10 years earlier. Now you see, last week we made very two important, announcements, and with a definite timeline. Now these two things like, virtual ID and face authentication did not come overnight. Face authentication, the virtual ID, I can tell you that we started, actually we had thought about it in 2009-10 at that time. But then that time our own internal view was that, okay, at this point of time it will perhaps create more confusion, because you see, just see at the national level, were we talking about the privacy in 2009-10? No, that was the time when the people were talking right to information, right? So it was, on the other side, right? So at that particular time, we thought that not now, but then at some later stage, this should be, this could be considered. So on this virtual ID, we started working on this about 1.5 years back. And after 1.5 years of solid work, because a lot of technology has gone, this one also I can say that nowhere in the world, this kind of a, maskable identity number, it is not used on such a large scale where, you can generate, your own virtual ID or Aadhaar number.
If I were to ask you very succinctly for the viewers to understand, because still there is a lot of confusion since the day you all have announced that there's going to be a virtual ID, a 16-digit OTP kind of a process which is going to come in place when you already have an Aadhaar number, a 12-digit number. So there's a lot of confusion on it. If I were to ask you briefly, how would you really explain the viewers what is this virtual ID going to do, and how does an Aadhaar card holder need to operate if he has an Aadhaar card number with himself?
Let me explain. Let's say I have to use my Aadhaar number at various places.
Right.
Today, some people have fear, not everyone, not some people fear that, look, if I give my Aadhaar number to a mobile phone company, and then if I give my Aadhaar number to bank, or if I give my Aadhaar number if I am checking into an hotel, and there, if I have to give my Aadhaar number, or if I have to give my Aadhaar number for my passport, then what will happen is that there were some concerns being expressed, though it is prohibited under the Aadhaar Act, that somebody will be able to link through Aadhaar number my presence in the various databases, right, and then certain profiling can happen, and then some people will be able to find out that okay, yes, I have mobile phones from these companies. I go into this hotel, I have a passport also.
Absolutely.
I have, bank accounts in such and such banks. So there were some people, who were concerned about it. So what we have done is that we have given an option to people. It is not compulsory. that they can go to our website and they can enter Aadhaar number.
So getting a virtual ID is optional?
Getting a virtual ID is an optional, right. So people can go to our website and can generate for themselves, self-generate a 16-digit virtual ID.
Okay. And this virtual ID, a user can generate as many IDs as he wants according to the transactions he's making.
Exactly. Okay. And then wherever he is required to give his Aadhaar number, he can use this virtual ID and authenticate himself either through the fingerprint or the OTP, right. So basically for him, it is a alternate Aadhaar number.
So as a user, if I generate a virtual ID and say for example, that particular number goes to a mobile operator. Now what all can that mobile operator access?
No, you see the mobile operator today, he wants to
with
authenticate.
With the help of that virtual ID, what all will he access?
So let's say, what does he do that today? Today, there, the telecom regulations or the telecom, the government instructions, now including the Supreme Court order, where each mobile connection has to be verified with Aadhaar. So today you have to give your Aadhaar number and put your fingerprint or the OTP, and your identity is confirmed.
Right.
Your name, address and other details are sent to the telecom companies, right? Now what happens is, in that process the telecom company gets your Aadhaar number, right? Now the telecom companies are supposed to keep your Aadhaar number safe and secure, and they should not use it for any other purpose. Now what will happen is that when you go for the telecom connection, then instead of Aadhaar, you can choose, you have an option to give this virtual ID. So you should give your virtual ID. So they will not get access to your Aadhaar number.
Okay.
Now the UIDAI also in the KYC will not give them the Aadhaar number, but then UIDAI will give them a 72 character string, which will be unique to you, which they can use it only, that agency can use it for your purpose, and that string of character only the UIDAI will understand and that mobile company will understand. Nobody else in the world will have the idea.
But you already have a number of service providers. How well equipped they are, because I'm sure there are a lot of existing databases with the service providers which are still accepting paper KYC. Now there's a lot of confusion on that. Is your Aadhaar number not exposed then if you're using the paper KYC?
That's correct.
So how does it happen then?
So those, as I said in the beginning, that the Aadhaar card holder has a choice.
Okay.
If you can generate a virtual ID, you can say this is my Aadhaar number. You can strike out the Aadhaar number and write the virtual ID and give it to that the person, whoever is accepting your paper Aadhaar card.
Okay.
Or if he has a machine, biometric machine, then you say that I will give you my virtual ID. I will not give you my Aadhaar number.
Okay.
And take my virtual ID and take my fingerprint and authenticate my identity. So these are the options which have been given. So this is very, very important. One question you asked about the face authentication, for example. Now the face authentication is also something what in the UIDAI, what we are very, very particular, that if any new technology comes anywhere in the world, we always do some kind of an internal analysis that if this technology has come, then whether can we use this technology to make our system more convenient. So far as this face authentication is concerned, we have been receiving reports that particularly the old people whose fingerprint gets worn out and they are not able to authenticate and they have a difficulty. They have to try 4 or 5 times. Many times for some people none of those fingerprints may work. And then
like
they have
recently,
to use the
Niti Aayog came out with a report where farmers couldn't record their fingerprints.
Right.
And they couldn't avail the benefits of the subsidies.
Exactly. So what, in order to help such category of people, we said that all right, fingerprint, the exact those markings and those fine lines may have blurred, but usually the face doesn't get blurred with age. Right. So we said that if the face is used along with the fingerprint, then that person can be authenticated.
So what about the photo option? You already record your photograph and you go for the authentication process.
Exactly.
So they're taking your photograph.
Right. So we already have the photograph of the person in our database.
Right.
Now when he goes for accessing the service, till now he was using only the fingerprint. So what will happen is that if supposing the fingerprint doesn't work, then he will be given another option that all right, you put your fingerprint again, but then your picture will be taken.
So with the existing Aadhaar card holders who already have a card, do they need to go and walk up to the center and give their facial recognition test again?
No.
It's not going to be like that.
No. I mean, the existing Aadhaar holders, nothing changes except that when they are going for accessing any service, for example, you go to a bank, for example. Now, in bank, you want to open a bank account. Today, most people, they are able to open bank account by giving their Aadhaar number and now the virtual ID.
Virtual ID.
And with the fingerprint, right? But in case of the very few percentage of people whose fingerprints
So you will have this additional option before you where you can recognize.
That in addition to the fingerprint, his photo also will be taken.
Okay.
The fingerprint and photo and then the Aadhaar number or the virtual ID, they will be sent to us and we will be able to authenticate that person.
So it's just this additional firewall for those minuscule section whose lines maybe of the hands and the iris that cannot be recorded properly. So you have this additional option for them.
No, I would say not the firewall, but the convenience wall.
Convenience wall. Okay. Okay. I stand corrected. Okay. Another thing I would like to understand from you, Dr. Pandey, that is that a lot has been said about this authentication user agency, that there'll be a global authentication user agency and a local one. Now, who qualifies for a local AUA and a local one? A global and a local. How does one qualify?
Right. I mean, this is something which the concerned government departments or the concerned laws will have to deal with it. For example, today...
So this is something which is in progress and you have to devise a methodology to
that.
Right,
exactly. I will give you an example. For example, Income Tax Act has been amended. It is a law passed by the Parliament. And Parliament tomorrow says that for the PAN card, we will need the pure Aadhaar number, not the virtual ID. Right. So in that particular case, they will be eligible to get the virtual, the Aadhaar number from our side.
Okay.
Aadhaar number from our side, whereas the resident is concerned, resident can still continue to use his virtual ID. So the distinction between the global AUA and then the local AUA, that will be done as per the law of the land.
Another question which I wanted to ask you, and that's a very important one. A deadline of March 31st, 2018 has been set to link your Aadhaar with the bank accounts. Now, when you have these virtual IDs and for which you have a deadline of June, is this deadline going to change in any way? Because still, I have come across a lot of people who have this question on their mind, that is this deadline going to extend?
No, you see, right now these deadlines have been prescribed by the various ministries. And it is not the UIDAI which prescribes this deadline. I mean, for example, if the deadline of linking bank accounts has been done, it is the Department of Revenue that has done this.
So for a viewer who's watching this program,
that's correct, right,
and is going to watch Dr. Pandey making a statement here, how does a viewer take this?
No, I mean, see, we should also consider this, that approximately 75 crore people have already linked their bank accounts with Aadhaar number. In case of a mobile number, they have done this. And then the government has always been very, very, accommodative, because if you see the original deadline was last year, right? But then the government also wants to include as many people into this whole thing, right? It kept on increasing. If there are certain difficulties come, then, the concerned department can always take a view of, whether, some more time is required.
So am I to get a news point from this interview that there is a probability that this deadline could shift to another date?
I mean, I can, if I were to, if I were to decide that, maybe I could have given you some definitive answer. Okay. But then the question is that in this government, these certain things are pertaining to their domains. Okay. So I think, they will definitely take a reasonable view of this and take an appropriate decision.
Okay. Now, there is another view. When you talk about things like virtual ID and eKYC, facial recognition, all these firewalls and convenience firewalls which you're talking about, how does a person sitting in the village who's poor, who's illiterate, who doesn't have access to things like website, how does he actually avail these options?
Now, you see, this option will be available through a common service center, for example. So, there are 260,000 common service center in this country. They can do this. It is available through our website. Okay. Secondly, this option will also be available to you go to any Aadhaar enrollment centers. At any point of time, there will be ranging from 30,000 to 40,000 actual Aadhaar enrollment and update centers.
But if you look at the scale of the people who got themselves registered under Aadhaar and the number of Aadhaar card holders who are existing, looking at that number, the kind of awareness which has come from the government, I don't think that's adequate.
You see, we have to actually understand that what is the percentage of the people who will choose to use this virtual ID, right? And in case supposing if more outlets are to be opened, presently it is our website. I mean, there cannot be anything more than that. This particular virtual ID, if I had said that virtual ID you can go only to our center and can generate, then that could have been restrictive. If this virtual ID option is available on our website, and our website is accessible to 2.5 lakh common service center, so that is definitely right. So in a, let's say in a village, in a very remote village, for example, let us say there is no connectivity, but today in this mobile phone, a smartphone, you walk few kilometers and maybe you can get a good signal, right, and through a smartphone you can access our website and generate a virtual ID. So I don't think that accessibility will be a problem so far as the virtual ID is concerned.
But when you talk about virtual IDs, what is this Aadhaar app which is also being talked about? I was reading an article where a French researcher has pointed out a lot of vulnerabilities, and he's saying it might not work. It might, you might have to just breach into the settings of your phone, and there are lots of fears like that. What would you say to that?
No,
what is this Aadhaar app? What is it going to do?
The Aadhaar we have provided, this is our app which we just put out in a public domain, and it is still, it is under the development. And this Aadhaar is an app which allows people to access, the Aadhaar card. Otherwise, let's say today if you have to carry Aadhaar card, you have to carry a paper copy or card copy, or some people have laminated this. We say that, okay, let's have an app in which, your Aadhaar number will be card will be very securely shown there, right? And then there, there are certain facilities like, biometric locking, unlocking, TOTP, all those facilities are there. Now, as is true with any application.
But biometric lock is another factor which has not been publicized too much. So how would people know about it?
Yes, so let me come to that. Let me first talk about the Aadhaar. Now, this Aadhaar this is an app which can help you, do many of the things. Otherwise, you have to go to our website and do this. So this is again an option of this Aadhaar that, look, you have a mobile phone, you don't want to go to our website and enter and do this biometric locking, unlocking, or download your Aadhaar card. These things will be available on your app.
And by no means there's going to be any identity breach or anything.
That's right. Now, as is true with any app, for example, you take any app of the world, whether it is an iOS or whether it is any Android app, right? Every app, there are certain vulnerabilities are getting discovered, and then those vulnerabilities have to be plugged. And as I said, that vulnerabilities have to be also scored from low to medium, medium to high, and high to critical, right? Now, depending upon what kind of a vulnerability will be there, our response would be there. But to claim that, any app or any system will be 100% vulnerability free, I don't think that anyone in the world can claim that, right? Whether it, you point out the most secure system in the world, I mean, they will have thousands of vulnerabilities occurring every day. But it is all the question that how do you deal with those vulnerability, and what is the classification of those vulnerability, and what kind of response you give. In this case also, certain vulnerabilities have been pointed out, but then these vulnerabilities are not something which will be kind of a completely, one can say that, it is something which will completely cripple the whole thing.
So as people are saying that Aadhaar is a work in progress, so you have to go miles and miles before again you say that you have the trust of the nation by your side. It was a pleasure talking to you, Dr. Pandey.
Thank you.
So that's it on this episode of To The Point. See you next time with another personality. Goodbye and thanks for watching.